and allow them a moment to introduce themselves and also answer our first question. So just tell us about yourself, who you are, where in the state you're located, what first drew you to the idea of using solar power for your home, and if you have as wonky as you want to get stats on your system, like what size system you have. Is it ground mounted, roof mounted, or home type? Anything you want to share about your home as well. I'll kick it over to you first, Cindy. And make sure you unmute.
There we go. Welcome, everybody. I'm Cindy Lewis. I'm in the Florida Keys, and I have had my solar panels now for just over 2 years, and very, very happy with them. And I'm geeking out and have all kinds of graphs, and I track my production and bills and everything else. I essentially have not had an electric bill for 2 years, and that covers all my AC, my hot tub if I want to turn the heat on, and my electric car.
Awesome, thank you. Stephanie?
Okay, I'm Stephanie, last name actually Costello now. After we got the solar panels, I got married. So, so we've had solar now for about 4 years. I think it's around an 8,000 kilowatt system, enough to, we intentionally, with guidance from our installer, oversized the system a little bit so that we could eventually add an electric car, which we did. But I think getting around to solar, even though I've always been somewhat environmentally conscious, that actually wasn't the reason. Actually had a door-to-door salesman come up from a different company than we went with, but it kind of it helped us understand a little bit about the process and what to look for. And then thankfully another person who had already gotten solar through Solar United Neighbors Co-op also guided me through the process and through to a lot of resources. And so I was able to then do a lot of my own due diligence to understand it and ask good questions. What I eventually did meet different installers and decide on an installer.
Thank you for sharing. Janet?
I'm Janet Stanko. I live in Tampa. Just been here for a little over a year. As we were moving to Tampa, I became aware of the co-op. And I had known about this Solar United Neighbors from my hometown in Jacksonville, and had attended a co-op meeting, knowing I wasn't going to buy right away because we had a move in our future. And also we had too many trees on our roof. So anyway, I had been a clean power activist for about 25 years. And so I pretty much had all the facts. And when we moved here, it was, as you normally would expect, it was very chaotic, a lot of work. And then in the midst of all that, I found out about the co-op. And I said, oh, okay, we're going to do this because the house is fairly new. Of course, the roof is fairly new. And the co-op, I knew, would make it easy to make a decision. I didn't have to do all the technical evaluation. I only brought in one contractor to bid, and that was the preferred contractor through Solar United Neighbors at that time, and as now was May Electric. And I had a difficult time explaining to my husband that we didn't need to do a lot of comparison because they already did it for us. And so we bought it. They installed it in one day. We have a 2-story townhouse, slightly undersized the system because we have a really fine oak tree in our backyard. And so we couldn't get as much solar as we wanted, especially since I have a plug-in hybrid electric car. And then this year, and we installed in January of 2021 before we even moved in. And in the first full year of operation, we recouped $905 worth of electricity. So we're already in payback, and we've decided to get another 5 panels because we trimmed back the tree. So we didn't cut it down, but we had to trim it back. And so we're getting 5 more panels, and that way it will cover probably 100% of our energy use, our electric use.
It is awesome to hear about your year one savings. Everyone, I do see that we are having issues with the chat. I've reached out to our IT department, so hopefully we will have a fix to that soon. But the Q&A feature is, featured on the 4th item that you can choose on the bottom or top of wherever your options are in your view, and you can use that easily. So I will pose another question, and then we already have one question that's come in. So thank you for that. And then we will move to some of your questions. So definitely use that Q&A feature or just raise your hand. So I wanted to ask about your experience in the co-op and how that was going solar, with your neighbors and through this kind of different model. And then additionally, some of you have already talked a little bit about electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids, but do you have any additional tools in your toolbox that you've brought on since going solar? So maybe smart thermostats or timers or any other energy efficiency upgrades that you made during that transition or post-solar? And really open to anyone who wants to grab that question.
Cindy, do you want to start? How did you hear about Sun? What was the experience through co-op, and any additional energy moves?
Well, I'm trying to think. I think I saw it on the internet, and I knew I was in the process of building a house. I lost my house in Hurricane Irma, and he had to tear everything down and start over. So I built the house with eventually going solar in mind. I knew that that was what I wanted. So the solar co-op for the Keys, or the Upper Keys, actually came on board. I attended some meetings, learned a lot about it. I actually did my own research and got quotes from some of the other competitors as well. They had them, here's my plans. This is what it's going to look like. I don't have a roof for you to look at, but this is what it's going to be. And ended up going with Cutler Bay down here in South Miami, which was eventually what the co-op was. That the co-op chose that provider for the co-op for the installations. When it came time to install, I did not have a roof yet, so I couldn't take advantage of the co-op. And they'd already given me an estimate, and I said, thank you very much. I'm going to keep going. Meanwhile, I continued my building project. There were a lot of delays. It was almost 2 years to complete building the house. And when I finally went back to Cutler Bay and said, okay, I have a roof, I'm ready to do it now. And they came, I said, can you re-quote it for me? It had been 2 years. And they came out and they said, we're going to quote it for you at the same price we did it for the co-op. And so they were my installers, and I've been really happy with them. Any questions I've had, I've been working with them. And at the time, I did not do a battery backup for my system. I have a smaller system, 800 square foot house, and I've got 15 panels, 5.3 kilowatt production for that. And it's more than enough for everything that I need. And I have been working with them, talking to them, and I think I'm going to go with a battery backup this winter. So,
thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's awesome, because you actually answered one of the questions about battery backup. And another question was about being in a higher hurricane area. Do you feel that there's a danger of damage? So I'm going to reword that a little bit and say, do you feel like there's an increased danger of damage because of your panels, or?
You know, my panels have not been through, you know, a real full-on hurricane. They've been through lots of severe storms and everything else. When I was talking to my installer, and I'm confident that they're probably going to be fine. I deliberately went with the raised seam roof so that the panels could clamp onto that raised seam and it did not penetrate my roof. It's metal roof, obviously. And I'm very confident with their clip system. And they said for Hurricane Irma, all of the buildings that they had put solar on prior to Hurricane Irma and other storms prior to that, they didn't lose a single panel. So I'm pretty confident that I should be okay.
And I'm sad that you don't get to meet him tonight. We were supposed to have another panelist who was unable to make it from Apalachicola, and he actually has the same standing seam roof with non-penetrating. It's a tension system of clips that adhere the panels to the roof, and went through Hurricane Michael 2 weeks after install, and clocked winds in his yard at 155 with those clips.
Yeah, I think down here in the Keys, everything has to be rated to withstand 180 to 200 mile an hour winds, because we're in a high velocity zone down here. And so everything met the building code and installation code, and my installers, Cutler Bay, they were great working with the building department to get all the permits and everything else. And it was seamless. It was really easy.
Great, thank you for sharing. Moving over to Janet and Stephanie, same question. So how did you hear about the co-op? And then there is a question that's come in that I think is specific to your area. I believe both of you have maybe have Duke Energy. So let us know who your utility is and if you are seeing minimum bills, and if it's made any difference in your financials or return on investment.
Okay, I'll go first. First of all, I forgot to mention, yes, I'm from St. Petersburg area. So I mentioned before, I heard about Solar United through a friend who posting on Facebook that he had gotten solar panels. So once we became interested, I reached out to him and he directed us towards Solar United. And then I attended some of the introductory meetings, and probably the best part and the part I would recommend to anybody considering solar is if you can be part of the group that reviews all the bids. You learn a lot and get to be part of the decision-making process. So you have more input, I guess, in the ultimate decision, weighing the pros and cons of each company. So that was a really valuable part of the experience, I think, and I really felt like I had a choice in what was happening and, moving forward with it. I mentioned that I have an electric car, which, when we were doing our install and deciding on the size of our system, our installer was able to guide us through estimating how much we might want to oversize if we wanted to get an EV, or maybe even get an addition on the house or something just slightly oversized. They really accurate in terms of estimating that for us. Ended up with extra in previous years. This will be our first year with the electric car, so it'll be interesting to see if we come close to break even. In terms of the hurricane, one part of the research that I did prior to choosing the installer was on the panels themselves are rated for different things. Most of them are comparable. The ones we went with are hail rated, which not all of them have that. And I don't know if that's like an extra, if it even needs to be. But in my mind, I was thinking impact anything, flying debris and that sort of thing. So we intentionally wanted something that was hail rated. The installer says that the tie-ins, and ours do go through the roof, make the roof stronger. I do remember seeing pictures from Hurricane Michael of a bunch of houses with the roofs ripped off, except for the ones that had solar panels in that region. So that was pretty reinforcing. And I also know, you know, they guarantee that, I don't remember all the terminology anymore, the roof penetration against leaks and all of that. So, and that comes back to when you're choosing your installer, have they been around for 30 years? Do they know what they're doing and that sort of thing? And then I think I answered most of the first question, and we can come back to it if I missed anything, but then we do have Duke Energy here. So then the part about the $30 minimum charge, I haven't quite figured that out yet in terms of how best to take advantage of that. You know, maybe I could, since it's going to be there no matter what, right? Should we crank our AC down to a more comfortable level and use some of it? And that's kind of hard to do because at the beginning of the year, we have so much excess, and then we have to use up our credit before we actually get billed for anything. So I haven't quite figured that out yet. And I'm hoping with the electric vehicle, it'll kind of work itself out. The other part of that too is, you know, if it makes sense that you have to use it, should you undersize your system a little bit? Those are questions I'm not sure about yet, and maybe one of the other panelists or hosts can answer that. And then lastly, I will say though, the things like this, the $30 minimum charge, are the reason to stay involved in, you know, writing your senators, your Congress, and all that stuff. And that's another thing that Solar United offers in terms of keeping you connected with what actions need to be taken outside of just being a homeowner. You know, how can you advocate for maintaining some of the benefits of this? I think worst comes to worst, you know, your return on investment is just a little bit delayed. You know, it's still going to be a better value than paying for energy.
Great, Janet.
I have TICO, and I think my basic rate is something like 26 some odd dollars. But as I understand it, everyone is charged that. I don't think that's just for people who have solar. So that doesn't count into your payback, because, I mean, it doesn't count against it, because you're on an even keel with the non-solar customers. So I, as I mentioned before, didn't do any shopping around, but I do know that there are some bad actors out there, and I knew that the co-op would help steer us and navigate us through those, away from those people. And I have heard from a neighbor that one guy stayed until 11 o'clock trying to get him to sign a contract. And so there are bad actors. And since this is early in the, how should I say, the adoption, we're in the early adoption phase still of solar. So bad actors can have a disproportionate impact on the image of solar. But the co-op steered us around. I had known about the co-op for many years and had aspired to take advantage of it when we were in a stable housing situation, and did that as soon as we moved here. But I also was, I don't know if this is true, but, and I maybe had just ascribed this as an advantage to the co-op, but I figured if there was something that I didn't like, that I felt where I wasn't being treated fairly, I felt like I could go to the co-op and mention it and see if I could get some leverage that way. Never had to do it because these people they really know their business. And I was on the selection committee, and I really benefited from being on the selection committee because I had access to information that I wouldn't have otherwise had. And so anyway, my satisfaction is very high. with the performance of the system because it's transparent. The software, the Enlighten software is a great tool. I haven't had any questions about my power use and payback too that I couldn't answer by looking at the software. And it's like, it's the only tangible thing I have because the collector's on the roof and you don't hardly see them. But whenever I talk about the system, I pull up the software and can show people what it actually, what it does and how it tells you what it's doing for you every step of the way. So I guess that's a good bit of what, and we did look at, we looked at the batteries, but I looked at it mainly because of the concern about what Russia could do to our power system. I didn't think that the power outages here warranted batteries, but I thought it would be good to have that security in case Russia did attack our power system, which our power grid, which they could. But we didn't end up going that direction. But we are picking up another 5 panels.
Thank you. And we have a couple questions around batteries, and Cindy said that she's looking into them now. I did want to share the way that I look at it is, your panels, as we're hearing you say, pay for themselves. They pay you back. It's an investment where you're going to get a return on your investment. Batteries are more like an insurance policy. So you could definitely get a return if, you are looking at the potential loss. So, you can save food by having batteries during a power outage. And then what are the main reasons that we see people choose batteries? Obviously low-hanging fruit is hurricanes. We're in Florida. But another huge reason that we see people choosing batteries is health. So having critical loads that they can't afford to be without, having medicines that need to be kept cold, or again, unfortunately, Mr. Marks from Apalachicola wasn't able to join us tonight, but he actually has a whole home generator backup in addition to his system, and not for a hurricane, although a hurricane hit his system very soon thereafter install, but because his elderly mother lived with him and they had needed a wheelchair lift for their multi-story home. And that was just a non-negotiable to have a wheelchair lift that was able to operate at all times. So things like that we see really commonly. And then, national security and, personal energy security as well. A lot of the bases in Florida, a lot of people don't know that most of the bases are solarized and have backup so that they can be resilient to any grid outages for whatever reason, whether it's cyber attacks or, physical attacks happening. So a lot of questions about battery backups. And I think that's a good way to kind of think about it is your solar's an investment, your batteries an insurance policy. And then as Janet mentioned, she has in-phase inverters, microinverters. So a lot of times you're already setting yourself up for a pretty easy connection to batteries if you have microinverters, and a lot of newer systems are truly very close to being battery ready. So I wanted to move to a question that was in the chat about roof repair. Is it simple to remove and reinstall panels if you need a roof repair? And then interested in hearing if anybody had, what was the age of your roof or condition of your roof whenever you decided to go solar. And I'll let Cindy go first because I see her hand up.
Well, I was actually wanted to talk about the battery backup before you get into the roof repair. I don't know because I have a new roof, so I haven't. You would obviously have to take them off. I'm sure you could get your installer to come and take them off and then put them back on. But I had a comment and sort of like to walk you through my mindset as why I did not get batteries originally. First off, they were expensive. And I had just been building a house, so I didn't have a lot of extra funds laying around. but I was waiting for that, the hybrid microinverters, the IQ8s to come out, and they were promising them and promising them. They're actually the microinverters that are used in the battery backup system for Enphase, and they were performing really well in that system, but they weren't quite ready for prime time to be used on the rooftop solar. So they would have to replace the microinverters that I already had. And I just spoke with my installer, and he was really honest, and he said, they finally came out and we're not happy with them. He said, I actually installed them on my sister's roof, and for the amount that it would cost, you know, another $5,000-6,000 on my roof with my 15 panels to replace them or upgrade to the IQ8s. He said, you're not going to get much of anything. He said, you're basically going to be able to run your refrigerator and 1 or 2 outlets like a fan or lights. And if a cloud goes over, everything shuts down. So he said it's not what they'd promised, or the technology just wasn't there. And he suggested that I save my money and put the batteries in. And for everybody to really understand that when there is an outage, I'm grid tied, and when there is an outage, a power outage, I can't use my solar. You know, I have no power, because the power company shuts everything down so that you're not backfeeding the lines and electrocuting the people that are trying to fix the lines. Now, with going to a battery backup system, it immediately shuts everything down off of the system, and you can run off of your batteries. You can produce your power, use your power during the day, charge your batteries, and then you can use them at night. Yes, critical load, and you have to be careful about what you're using and stuff. So that was my rationale, and I didn't my choice to not go with battery backup was pending new technology, and the new technology apparently didn't meet up to the standards that they were hoping for. So I'm going to go with a battery backup system this winter.
And are you going with the Enphase battery backup system or power walls, or have you made that decision yet?
I'll probably stay with Enphase. My whole system is compatible with that, and that's the system that Cutler Bay is. And they said that there's actually a new twice as efficient, the new generation of the Enphase batteries coming out this winter, and he said that's what he wants to install. So I really appreciate these people just shooting straight from the hip, and everything that he said has absolutely been in lockstep with everything that I've researched on my own.
Great, thank you. I don't know if any other panelists had something to add to the battery line of questioning. If not, there was a question about Tier 2 liability insurance. I know that you wouldn't have that, Cindy, because you are not, your system is 5.3. Stephanie or Janet, did you have a system that was over 11.7?
No.
I don't, but I also know, you know, if there's a Facebook group, I have a Facebook group. Is it Tampa Bay Solar Homeowners? I can't remember the exact name of it. There's a lot of experts in the groups like that. So if you can get connected with a Facebook group as well to ask questions like that, everyone has always been super helpful anytime I have a question. There are some installers on those as well that can also answer questions like expertly, not just some layperson trying to answer that.
Yeah, thank you. And we can also add our Google Forum link into the chat, and that's basically where we send people with insurance questions, because we do get this question a lot. And I really appreciate people calling out, the panelists calling out earlier that, you know, staying connected with us is a good way to learn how to advocate for solar rights. We are actually fighting this insurance issue. The Public Service Commission has now completely stated that it's not rooted in science. Tier 2 liability insurance should not be required, and requested the utilities to stop requiring it, that it was a misread of their rulemaking. So we are pushing that to happen. However, a lot of times you can find an umbrella policy that, that adds a significant amount per month, but they should not. You can find a general umbrella policy that is very low cost per year. We actually saw an average of $50 a year as the policy amount for an umbrella policy, which is really all you need is an umbrella policy for tier 2 liability insurance. Yeah, awesome things that Julia is posting in the chat. And then we have a question about if you need to clean your solar panels. So especially interested in hearing what Janet and Stephanie have to say about this, having a little bit more tree coverage on their side of the state.
I'll start. I have just kind of gone with what we've been told, which is if you have a certain slope to your roof, you don't need to clean your panels. We live in a very high pollution area, so I hope that's true because I noticed significantly more particulates accumulating on my porch than at our last house. So I hope it's true. I kind of check my array to see if it seems like it's going down in solar production, which is my guess as to what would happen if there was getting to be a buildup on top of the collectors. And I don't see a drop in production. And we've had ours for 1.5 years. So that's my best guess.
And we haven't cleaned ours yet. Our year-to-year production seems pretty similar, not dissimilar enough to attribute it to like dirty panels, but just changes in weather and amount of sunlight. And that's another thing. I've actually seen some people test their panels because depending, of course, on your inverter and all of these other things, you can actually see the production of each individual panel. I've seen people who have cleaned half of their panels and left the other half dirty and compared their production. And not really a significant difference in production. The amount of rain we get here and the torrential downpours takes care of it. There's probably a period where it's high pollen and dry where you might see some minor, decrease. But I'm not getting up on the roof.
Yeah, I have to say the same thing. In the 2 years that I've had my panels, I haven't cleaned them, and I do watch production. As Stephanie said, you can see each array and what it's producing, and I can look at it month by month per array, and I don't really see any noticeable drop from over a period of time. The more significant drop is definitely due to the lengthening and shortening days in the course of the year. During the summer solstice, when we have our longest days, we have our best production. And the winter solstice, it's definitely down.
Great, thank you for sharing. And Julia, if you ever have anything to share as our other solar homeowner.
Yeah, did we
so.
have any considerations on roof age and repair from any of you guys? There was a question about, what to do when you need to work on your roof. So I'm not sure what you considered. Cindy, you obviously have a new roof, so that's a little more matched to the length of the solar. Stephanie or Janet, pretty new homes, or what do you have to consider about what happens then?
I did. We got our roof was like 6 months old when we got solar. I definitely I wouldn't put it on a 10-year-old roof without replacing the roof first, I don't think. But that said, one of the things I recall from the selection committee meetings is that there was a quote for removing and replacing the panels. So that would be something to consider. Something you should ask the installer if they can give you a quote for that. Obviously, it's going to change if it's 10 years down the road, but it could give you an idea. But again, hopefully you can kind of match the age of the roof to the panels.
You guys are just like ready to give an info session here, leading with all the answers. So Janet, yours is a new roof as well?
Yeah, it's about 6 years old now, but it was more like 4.5 or 5 when we put the panels on. And of course, it seems that the roof under the panels doesn't age as fast as the surrounding roof. But I guess if you have to replace the rest of it, you're not going to just go around your panels. You'll have to take those off and have it replaced.
Yeah, so we have an asphalt shingle roof, and we're solar owners, and this was a big consideration because we will need to replace our roof soon. But we have and secured a price, and this prices could be per watt, or they could be per panel, or they could be a flat price. And it's very hard for an installer to guarantee a price very far out. You obviously don't know about the market industry, but we have locked into a price to remove and replace. So we did the math on that, on what we'd save in the solar and what it would pay for our new roof. So just great to know up ahead of time if you're, if you only have your roof a few years, you're good to go. And then anywhere in that middle time, you want to be considering that.
One other interesting comment, my daughter-in-law actually has solar panels up in Maryland, and she sold the house that they originally installed solar on, and then 5 years later sold it, and she actually had her installers come remove the solar panels and the whole system and put it on her new house.
Wow.
So there you go.
Did they use Velcro?
I don't know. I don't know what I'm pretty sure they had asphalt shingles on that roof. So I don't know how and the people that bought the house didn't want the solar panels. I thought that was stupid. But anyway, they didn't want them. They wanted them removed. So she removed them and put them on her new house, and she's totally happy with them.
Well, that's one way to do it. So I wanted to pose a kind of difficult question, one that we have gotten in the chat or in the Q&A, and you've spoken about a little bit with data. So it sounds like all of you are really watching and following your data. Have you done calculations on when you will hit your return on investment, when you will pay off your loan, if you're comfortable sharing how you paid for your panels, when you kind of hit that and you have recouped the full cost of your investment and are now just pocketing all of the additional monies. And it sounds like everyone here got in before the historic rate increase that we just had in the state of Florida. So kudos to you.
I'll start with, I'm not really sure how to calculate my return on investment. I know that sounds silly. It sounds like a really important question, but I also know that the lifetime of the solar panels is pretty long. It's guaranteed production for, I think, 25 years at 93% or something of their original. So I feel like it's going to last long enough to get a return on investment, even if it's not in 5 years or 10 years. So in terms of calculating it, I don't know if it's as simple as, okay, my panels cost this much, this is how much my monthly bill would have been, and I divide it. I'm not positive. So maybe somebody else has the math down on that. But what I did want to say, what I wanted to answer was because the only difficult time we had in terms of installing solar was financing. The original finance company, I think, that was going to work with us stopped doing solar or stopped working with that particular company. I can't remember. And so we ended up getting a kind of a crappy interest rate. So if I were to take the full 20 years to pay off my loan, it would have been bad. So we were able to pay it off in 2 years. We prioritized that as a payoff. So looking at that, I guess that's another thing to understand is that if you are going to have to finance your solar panels, who finances with the particular company. I don't know if it's still limited. It may be an expanded market now, but at the time there were very few that we could work with that offered a decent interest rate. So that's something to look into, look and see who you can finance through with each company or anyone before you commit, I suppose. I mean, there's always, you're never too late to get out with this, but so that was a challenge in terms of that, and it would have ruined our return had we had to take the full 20 years to pay it off.
So based on what you're saying, I am concluding that you went with a solar financing company. So a company that specialized just in solar financing.
It was Admiral's Bank.
It was Admirals at the merge.
Yeah, it was Admiral's, and we ended up with like a 7% interest rate that was like another mortgage. So I don't know what the terminology is, like compounding interest. It was like, it would have doubled the cost of our system. So thankfully we were able to, we were pretty committed and dedicated to getting it, and we knew that we could pay it off early. But yeah, so I don't know, interest rates obviously right now may be a lot lower anyway, right? So I'm not sure of the different companies and whether solar financing versus a regular bank and what we did, honestly. Sounds like Julia recalls some of that too.
And I will say you covered one feature that we do see in a lot of home construction loans in general, and definitely in solar financing, no prepayment penalty.
Good.
Yep, I did drop a paying for your panels flyer in the chat. So financing is a really huge, if you don't have cash saved, or if you don't want to take a HELOC or refinance your home mortgage, which is often one of the best ways for the most bang for your buck, that doesn't work for everybody. So installers always offer financing products. So you don't have to go with the installers offer financing. Certainly search around. Paying for your panels is simply some suggestions to research. There's some credit unions, there's some banks that are out there that you might as well just shop around. Just like you're shopping for solar, you want to shop for the best loan and the best terms. And the things you want to ask are things like early prepayment, or what happens with my income tax credit? What do I have to do with that? Do I have to give that to you and apply it to the loan, or can I keep that? So definitely looking at the overall life of that loan, and then the monthly payment, look at the big picture as well as the day-to-day experience.
I would like to add that we, as I mentioned, we were moving, and we have all of our investments with Raymond James, and so. And we have a pretty good portfolio, pretty big portfolio. So when we bought the house, we bought the house with money from our own account, only it was a loan and exceedingly low interest. So then when we wanted to take out an additional increment of money for the solar, we just added on to that. So I don't think that's real well known, but if you have enough resources to cover what you're trying to do, you could take a loan against your own money. And they maybe will, I forget what the term is, but they'll expect you to commit more than the amount of money you owe, just in case the stock market goes up or down. But it could be a good thing and a very easy thing, and no fees. So if you're in that position, it can work.
Yeah, I don't know much about this option either, but I have heard of this. I've heard of a lot of people, doing this loan against your 401k even, but a loan against yourself basically. We have some people adding stuff into the chat. Definitely look in the chat. I'm going to call out a couple of the things that were added from solar homeowners who are here. Somebody added that they've got a HELOC at 2.99% from a credit union. We always suggest looking at credit unions. And HELOCs can also be, the interest paid on a HELOC can be tax deductible if you itemize your taxes. So something to bring up to your accountant if you are looking at a HELOC, which in today's market, a lot of people are looking at HELOC. And then a lot of people itemize for different reasons. Even the type of job you have may lend your, finances to itemization. Someone said they got a 25-year 1.49% interest with Mosaic. So that is a solar financing company. Again, no prepayment penalty. So even though that's a long loan term of 25 years, you can, make premium or payments on the principal rather, with no penalty. And then a couple of questions about the tax credit. So Janet, Cindy, or Stephanie, if you've taken the tax credit yet, if you want to share any experience with filing that form and how you went about that, and if you have rollover from year to year.
I guess I'll jump in first. It's a tax credit, not a rebate, and so they take it off of whatever income tax you would normally pay, and there is the ability to roll it over. I think it's 3 years. I don't think it's 5. Is it 5 years? Okay, I haven't gotten that far yet, but I do have that tax credit. And my accountant did it. I just told her, I said, I've got a tax credit here. And she just looked it up and said, okay, here's the form, and filled it out. It was not a problem. But I've also been, because of the losses incurred over the loss of my house, I had so many credits already that it's deferred down the road. But nonetheless, it was, and I got in when it was 26% tax credit on the install. And with mine, because I'd managed to squirrel away some of my building funds, I paid for it outright, which, yes, is a hefty chunk of change, but it saved me the loan and the added fees and everything else. I felt that in the long run, it was the way I wanted to do and just be done with it. And but here in the Keys, the Upper Keys anyway, we have the Florida Electric Co-op, and they also offered program where they would give you a 10-year loan on the installation, and you could actually pay it right back. And I don't remember the details to it, but that seemed like a reasonable solution, and you could pay it back right included in your monthly electric bill.
So Cindy's going to make us all jealous. That is only offered in the Florida Keys. And the city of Tallahassee, they are really picky on how many people they let into their program like that. But they shut it down every so often and cap it. But really, the Florida Keys Electric Cooperative is the only one that offers that solar loan type of program. OUC in Orlando has on-bill financing for energy efficiency measures, really small list of things that are covered, but it is interest-free for 18 months. So this is another reason to get really connected to us, because we are pushing for this. We're pushing for options just like this, for things that are called pay-as-you-save, for on-bill financing and solar loans. What Cindy has available in her area actually doesn't even look at your credit. It looks at your timely payments to the utility company. So, and again, it's interest deferred, repay it on your utility bill. So really great options. These are things that we'd like to see across the state. So reasons to get connected, making that plug since we're getting low on time. And would love to hear from Stephanie and Janet about their experience with the ITC.
Mine was real simple. We had our accountant submit it, and it ended up being with the documentation from the installer. It was easy to compute the credit, and he just submitted one additional form. So it was easy.
I do my own taxes on TurboTax, very basic form. And I was able to do it myself. And it wasn't even unclear. I don't remember now, because it's been 4 years, and I did have to roll it over into a second year. And again, it was easy. I think they even already had it preloaded in TurboTax for me. And I got in when it was 33% rebate or credit, whatever the term is. And now I'll be going through it again with the car. I got one, I made sure and got one that had the rebate. So refresh my memory next year in terms of that. And it'll also probably have to be rolled over into the next year. But yeah, it was really simple. I didn't have any difficulty and there was no questions about it. It was just done.
Well, we do have sort of a wrap up with just a few questions left. We'll keep scanning for your questions in the chat, but would you have done anything differently? Or is there something that was missing that you wish you had known when you started that you could share with us?
This is Janet. I wouldn't do anything different. We are getting the extra 5 panels, but we hadn't trimmed the tree or recognized the need to trim our tree in the back. So we got the most we could get at the time. So the 5 panels is just, it wasn't an error. It was just what we see an opportunity to get more and cover more of our electricity use.
And I don't think the only thing I would change is maybe I could have done better research on the financing, but in the end it worked out for us. And then, the best part is also never regretting the installer is probably the best part, because we've actually had a couple questions that they answer things about like, hey, can you look at my bill and make sure am I reading this right? And I didn't mess anything up, we're good. So they'll even do stuff like that for us. And we did have an inverter go out 3 or 4 years, I guess. And again, the installer took care of the whole process for it. So, and it was covered under warranty. So we talk a lot about the panels, but it's also important to understand the different inverters. But yeah, so everything's been such smooth sailing. And I think that came down to the prior research and the resources available through Solar United.
Yeah, can't think of really anything I regret. My house is an octagon, so I guess the challenge of putting rectangular panels on triangular roofs, and I've got panels on 5 of my 8 roofs, and the roofs go east, southeast, south, southwest, west. And my installer actually just recently reevaluated, and he said there really isn't a whole lot you're going to gain by putting panels on those northeast and northwest facing roof sections. And he says it's probably not worth it right now, but he says we can always do it if we need to, but he says you're already covering 100% of your costs on that. And I guess I thought, I wish I'd maybe done a battery backup originally, but I'm 2 years down the road and saw two years better technology for the batteries when I put them in. So I think it's a win-win situation.
I do have a comment real quick. Our installer gave us an option, and I can't seem to find the amount of money, but it was to provide greater insurance coverage in case a panel needs to be replaced and the manufacturer goes out of that business and refuses to replace it. And it had to be a judgment call, and we decided that with LG being the manufacturer of the panels, we thought that it would be unlikely that they would go out of that business and refuse to cover warranty work. So we didn't get it. So I don't know, in one of the presentations, someone who had done some research said it's more likely that your panels will go out right away if you're going to have a problem, rather than 17 years down the road on a 25-year warranty. So that was another reason why we didn't get that. I don't know what other people would think about that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Just to share what that is actually a third-party warranty called Solar Insure, kind of like a home warranty that you can buy for your home to kind of cover everything. It is really nifty, and panels themselves, like Janet was saying, it's unlikely that anything's going to happen to them, even in the first year. There's no moving parts in the panels, and they're just super straightforward. An inverter can definitely go out. Inverters are the brains of the operation, but panels are really just doing what they do, just holding some minerals that get excited in sunlight, and static operations. So thank you so much. We've had a ton of questions. I think that y'all really fielded questions from all across the board. So we're so grateful for our panelists and sharing your experience. It really is so powerful to hear from somebody who's already done it and, you know, went through the process and is a solar homeowner. Really excited to have, we had 30 people join us tonight to hear from you. So that is, you know, 30 people that were able to be edified by your personal experience going solar. So we're really grateful for you, grateful for everyone who joined tonight. And we put our email in the chat in case you have any follow-up questions. You can direct those to us, and we hope that you will become a solar homeowner or just get engaged in protecting solar rights. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.